I discovered my wife was cheating last July. I have been in the ninth circle of hell since then. I never suspected it. At first, I could not believe that my wife would do something like that. We had been married for a little over 8 years, and up until then, I was the happiest man in the world. Well-known psychiatrist Elizabeth Kubler-Ross asserted that when a person is faced with the reality of impending death or other extremely awful fate, he or she will experience a series of emotional stages: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I remembered this from some psychology lecture in college. Denial is the first stage, and I was deep in it. If Mary was cheating, our marriage was dead. But she couldn't be. I wondered if I would suffer all stages of grief for the death of my love. I wondered if I ever reached acceptance, would the pain and heartbreak follow me forever? I met Mary in college. I was studying computer science, and as part of the general education requirements, I had to take an English class. I was not looking forward to reading stories or poetry written by old and dead people. I figured that my mind could only hold so many things. Mostly, those things consisted of computer code and where the next party was going to be. I was the typical computer nerd, tall and a little gangly. I was a so-so student, wasn't good enough to be a first string in any of the sports I went out for, and didn't belong to any clubs or take part in any after-school activities. But I was good with computers. I was the guy that everybody recognized and nodded hello to, but whose name they couldn't remember. My love life had only consisted of a couple of turns with Pauline French after my senior year of high school. I think she took pity on me. We hung together for almost 2 months before she moved on to greener pastures. Since then, we computer nerds hung out and told stories about what great lovers we were, and what we would do to that pretty girl in class if we ever had the chance. When I met Mary, my life changed. I sat next to her in the English class and fell into her eyes, those deep hazel eyes. I was lost in the deep pools of her eyes. During that first class, I did not see much beyond her eyes, but as she was leaving, I got a good look at the rest of her. Mary had shoulder-length blonde hair with a slight curl at the ends, a cute button nose and lips that always had a little upturn at the corners. She wasn't as tall as me. I guessed she must have been about 5'7". I did not have enough experience with bra sizes, but I did notice that she did fill out her shirt nicely. Her lower half was sheathed in a pair of tight jeans that sculpted her backside nicely. She was perfect. Every day after that, I made it a point to sit next to her. After a month, she spoke to me. She said that she noticed my calculus books and asked if I could tutor her as she was taking college algebra and having a difficult time. She said that she needed to pass the class to graduate. I would have agreed to anything she asked. After that, we met in the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays after class. I tried to keep focused, but having the most beautiful girl next to me turned my mind to mush. Something must have worked, because Mary got a B on her midterm test. She was so happy. When she got the grade, she jumped up and down and grabbed me for a hug. She kissed my cheek and I thought my head was going to explode. I was in heaven. Then I said something completely out of character for me. "Do you want to see a movie on Friday?" "Sure, what time?" She replied. "Wait, what?" I fumbled. I said yes, dummy. I don't think my feet touched the ground all the way back to my dorm room. I spent the rest of the week in a daze. I even went to the store to get a new pair of Dockers and a polo shirt to wear. My nerd friends teased me no end. I took it with a smile on my face. I was counting the minutes until my date. But I survived somehow by the time Friday night arrived. Our first date was to the latest Halloween movie. I know, it's really classy. It was a typical slasher movie with blood, dismemberments, and stupid characters. I thought that she would have to sit real close to me because she was frightened. Not so much, but we had fun. Mary and I whispered who would be the next kid on the screen to get it. She was right more often than I was. And later I got a quick goodnight kiss on the doorstep. On our fourth date, she invited me into her dorm room and we clumsily made love. It must have been good for her because she invited me up again after our next date. From there, we became a couple. Amazingly, we had a lot of things in common. We liked the same movies, read the same books, and loved the same foods. After a couple of months, I was seriously in love. By the time finals rolled around, I was sure that she was in love with me. We were happy. Right before Christmas break, we were lying in her bed when I told her that I loved her. I said that she was the best thing to happen to me. She smiled and said, "I love you too. Life was great." Even though we didn't have any classes together in the spring semester, we still studied together in the library every day after classes. We picked up right where we left off after the break, with our love getting stronger each week. We spent spring break together. We rented a cabin at the lake. I intended to go hiking and fishing, but I don't think we made it out of the cabin the whole week. On the last night, I got down on my knees and proposed. She said yes. 3 months later, we graduated, and 5 months after that, we were married. After school, I got a job doing computer security. Our company integrated security software into the computers of small businesses that had anything from 10 to 50 workstations. I wrote code to make the different systems talk to each other. My boss was Bob. Bob started the company 10 years ago with just 2 employees. After a couple of mergers and buyouts, his company had grown to about 50 employees and was doing great. Bob was a good boss and mentor. After I had been with the company for about 5 years, Bob got an offer to sell out. He said some big venture capital group in the city needed our position in the small business market to complement a larger computer division. He said the money was too good to pass up, and he sold. He did stay on as manager, and part of the deal was that we all kept our jobs. The overall effect was minimal. We never saw the new owners, and Bob continued to run it his way. Work continued uninterrupted. Mary got a job right after graduation with Dr. Hubert, a dentist. She took over the role of office manager. Her boss was a kindly old dentist who reminded me of the absent-minded professor, right down to the funny glasses on the end of his nose that he was always searching for. Dr. Hubert always seemed lost, but he was a magician in a mouth. His dentistry skills were the best in the area, and patients came from long distances to have him work on their teeth if they could get an appointment. When Mary began working there, the office was in a shambles. Bills were unpaid, files were lost, billing systems were antiquated, and it was a general mess. Mary set about to clean it up and help the good doctor to a better practice. The results were revolutionary. After 3 years, the good doctor's practice was the envy of the region. Revenues were up, office turnover was eliminated, morale was high, and the doctor even dressed better. Mary was responsible for all of it. I was very proud of her. After we married, Mary and I got a little apartment near my job. We christened every flat surface and every room numerous times. We both decided to get our careers going before we had kids. Every year, we took a vacation around our anniversary. At first, we couldn't afford much and went back to our cabin by the lake. After a couple of years, our vacations got a little better, and 1 year we flew to Florida and spent a week at Disney World. After about 5 years in the apartment, we decided to look for a house. After looking around for a couple of months, we picked a small house with enough room for our soon-to-be family to grow into. We bought it and moved in, again utilizing every flat surface and every room for our sexual gymnastics. After about 7 years, Mary came home from work very excited. It appeared that the management and organization of the good doctor's office were being noticed. The doctor had a couple of big-dollar executive types as patients, and they had been asking about Mary. They noticed the office's turnaround and commented to the doctor. Doctor. Hubert could not say enough about Mary. One of the executives approached Mary with a job offer. That night and over the next few days, we discussed the offer. I felt that we were on the verge of starting a family and that this new job would set that back a couple of years. We didn't need the additional money and doctor. Hubert was like family to us. She felt that this could open up to greater opportunities in the future. If we could hold off on the family for a couple of years, she said she would make it up to me. I didn't have much of a choice and I relented. 1 month later, Mary began as the personal assistant to Dana Larson, Vice President of Finance for Cascade Capital. I didn't know at the time, but Cascade Capital was the venture capital firm that ultimately owned the company I was already working for. Early on, I never noticed a change in Mary or in our relationship. Our lovemaking did decrease, but I assumed it was because of the sometimes odd hours she and her boss worked. Occasionally, she had to attend meetings with him past dinner and was tired when she got home. In the later months, our sex life began to suffer more. I tried to do things to please Mary, but she ignored all of my advances. I don't think we made love for the 2 months leading up to the awards dinner. The concept of her cheating on me was so alien that I never even considered it. I found out that Mary was cheating with her boss on the day of her company's annual awards dinner. I would not believe it. Each year her company has a dinner to celebrate the past year's successes and recognize the big players. We were invited to go. As we prepared to leave, I still could not believe that Mary was cheating. I reviewed the past months in my head and could not see anything. We loved each other. I loved her and trusted her with my life. Looking back, I may have suffered from love blindness. I needed some kind of proof that Mary was unfaithful, some sign that I could confirm with my own eyes. I took my blinders off and got ready for the dinner. As I watched her prepare, I took careful notes. What was she wearing? What did her makeup look like? How much lipstick, thong underwear, stockings? All of it. On the drive, I said little. Mary was excited because Mr. Larson, her boss, was getting some kind of award. If this were true, my anger would sure be coming out next. I knew I had to control this to get the facts. Now I knew how Bruce Banner felt. We arrived right on time as Mary planned it that way. We quickly entered and Mary rushed off to make sure that everything was going well. But about 15 minutes later, he walked in. On his arm was his wife. She was beautiful. What did he need my Mary for when he had that waiting for him at home? I walked over to the bar and got a drink and studied him. I saw how people gravitated towards him as if he were royalty, sucking up to the boss. I saw his phony smiles and the way he placated everyone. I hated him. Hated him. Very quickly, Mary was at his side. Larson's wife, Caroline, moved off to say hello to some of the other executives' wives. From across the room, I watched how Larson and Mary interacted. I saw the glances, the touches on the arm, the smiles. It was definitely more than a boss or personal assistant relationship. Soon we sat down for dinner. Larson and his wife sat at the head table with us at another table, close by. Mary selected the seat facing Larson. Thus began a typical boring awards banquet. We had rubber chicken for the main course and long pompous speeches for dessert. After dinner, tables were moved out and the dancing began. I tried to keep Mary close to me, but often she said that she had to run over to Larson to assist with some task. Whenever they were together, I tried to keep an eye on them, but sometimes this turned out impossible. Mary's co-workers came up to me to talk, or some other distraction prevented me from constant vigilance. Mary and I danced a couple of times to both slow and fast songs, at times embracing and others inches apart. A little after midnight, I was getting tired. I mentioned to Mary that we should be leaving soon, and eventually she reluctantly agreed. But first, she asked for one more dance. On that dance floor, my world crashed. Mary was no longer wearing her underwear. I knew during the previous dances that she had her panties on, and I could feel it. Now her backside was smooth. No sight of the blue thong I saw her put on this evening. I was crushed. In our entire life together, I had never known her to be without underwear. Even when I asked, she refused. But somehow she did it for him. We said our goodbyes soon after and left. The drive home was quiet, each of us in our own thoughts, in our own world, or in my case, in my own hell. When we arrived home, Mary dashed upstairs, saying something about needing a shower before bed. I mumbled something. It didn't matter anymore. I stripped off my suit, hung it up, and climbed into bed. A few minutes later, Mary crawled into bed beside me. She was wearing her long cotton nightgown. As she leaned over to me, she said, "Wasn't that a glorious night?" I pretended to already be asleep. She gave me a peck on the cheek and rolled over away from me. I heard her breathing change and a couple of minutes signaling sleep. It was then that the first tears started to flow, soaking my pillow. The next morning, as I stood under the hot water of my shower, I think I experienced every feeling known to man. Love, hate, anger, pain. Then there were thoughts of more revenge, but also of leniency, sentiments of inadequacy for not being man enough to keep my woman, feeling foolish for not detecting her deceit before now, and finally triumphant in my ultimate discovery. My thoughts bounced around inside me, colliding, becoming nothing more than noise inside my head. At the end of the shower, the overriding emotion was anger. I would make him pay, somehow. In the following days, I looked for a way to make him suffer for what he had done to my marriage. Murder was out, nor did I think I could sneak up on him and use a lead pipe on his knees. There must be a way. I knew Mary had some responsibility for this mess also. She'd lied to me. She'd sworn fidelity and then betrayed me. I thought back through our history together. Where did I go wrong? What did I do to lose her respect? When did I lose it? Did she let herself be seduced by his money and power? I had trusted her, and I had invested years of my life in her because I believed in her. Years I would never get back. They both would pay. The solution presented itself a few days later. Mary had gone to the shopping mall for some new shoes. At least that's what she told me. On the counter sat Mary's laptop. If I could hack into their company's system, maybe I could find a way to make them suffer. I am a computer security expert, so I figured it would not be too difficult to hack their system. I booted her computer up, linked to her work system, and waited for the password prompt. Knowing Mary, her password would not be too hard to crack. But before I began my first attempt, I noted her day planner on the counter. Being married to a computer security expert, Mary wouldn't break the first rule of passwords, would she? I opened the day planner, turned to the letter P, and sure enough, her password was written right there. I began to look through the day planner and found a gold mine. Not only were her login and passwords written down, but Larson's as well as credit card numbers, bank accounts, birth dates, and social security numbers. I made a quick trip to Kinko and copied all the pages in her day planner. I would explore their system at another time. That time presented itself a few days later. Again, Mary left her computer on the counter while she went out. I booted it up and logged in using her password. Since she worked for the vice president, she had access to almost the entire system. I could see payroll, purchasing, accounting, and most of the production systems. I found the email system and looked around there a bit. I did not read or copy all of Mary's emails. I did not want to read all the details of her liaisons. I was having a hard enough time just keeping food down as it is. There had to be a way for revenge somewhere in this system. I looked into the accounting system. Actually, it was a very basic system and not very well secured. Maybe my payback solution was in here. I looked at their purchasing system. It appeared that once an invoice was entered, it had to be approved and then moved for payment. Maybe I could make a couple of changes to an invoice after it had been approved. Have the system forward the money to Larson, or an account set up in Larson's name, and then wait for the auditors to catch him. Brilliant. Larson would be ruined, Mary would be out of a job, and the affair would be done. I set about my plan the next day. Using the information from Mary's day planner, I set up an account in Larson's name at a bank downtown. Then I went across the street into another bank and did the same. With the new account information in hand, I just needed a crack at Mary's computer to complete the transfer. The next day, while Mary was at the gym, I struck. I logged in using Larson's password and went directly to the accounting system. I found an invoice that had been approved and opened it up. The invoice had a place for a rebate to the manufacturer. I entered 3% as the rebate and Larson's bank information into the bank routing field. I figured 3% would not raise an immediate red flag. I did the same on another invoice, sending the rebate to the other bank account. I closed out of the system and poured myself a drink. I opened the good scotch this time. The first drink was to congratulate myself on a great plan. The second drink was to help me forget about my failed marriage. I waited a couple of days and nothing happened. No police raids, no newspaper headlines, no nothing. Damn. Maybe the plan was good, but not the scale. So at my first chance, I got Mary's computer, logged in, and altered a couple more invoices. I got in and out in a flash. Still nothing. Maybe if I bumped the rebate to 4%. The next day, I jumped into the system, added a 4% rebate to 2 invoices, and jumped out. Our home life was stressful. I had stopped approaching Mary for sex, and she never came to me. I stayed up late at night to watch the Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears, or any other game that was on. We had cable as there was always some game on to keep me interested. Mary made a comment about my new interest in sports. I told her that these games were important and that everybody at work watched them. I had a very hard time even touching Mary. The thought that she had given what was once mine to another made my head spin. More than once after a hug or quick kiss, I would run to the nearest toilet with nausea. Then the game changed. When I got to work the next day, Bob called me into his office. He said that corporate wanted to send me to New York to update the branch office's security systems. I looked at Bob with a big question mark on my face. Me. Yes, they ask for you by name. They want you to fly out Monday morning and return Friday. They want you to update all the workstations and servers in the New York office. Bob, I don't do that kind of stuff. Updating software is an IT job. Why me? Bob replied. I have no idea. I tried to explain that's not what we do and that is definitely not what you do. But they were adamant. It has to be you, no one else. Then I realized what this was. My wife's lover wanted me gone for a couple of days. I guess that they were not getting enough quality time together. I resigned myself. Okay, Bob, I'll go. Thanks, I have never had Cooperate make these kinds of demands and I hope they don't continue. He handed over a couple of airline tickets. Oh, I thought, this crap will continue as long as Larson is out of jail. I just decided to kick my revenge plan up a notch. Later that night, Mary and I were having dinner. Life around the house had been different lately. I had been doing my best not to strangle her, and she had been doing her best not to have sex with me. I mentioned that I had to go to New York for the next week. She pretended that she would miss me. This is when I found out about Mary's involvement. Mary let it slip how excited she was about the theater next week. But when I looked up from my plate, she quickly changed her story to say she was going to the movie theater with her girlfriends to see the latest chick flick. I pretended not to notice the lie. I wondered where Larson's wife was going to be. She must be out of town too. What excuse did he use for her? I needed a scotch. I have been using scotch as an anesthetic more and more lately. That was not a good thing. Mary's participation in this New York farce brought her into my crosshairs. The next day, I opened a couple of accounts in her name at both the downtown banks. Before the weekend, I logged in and altered a couple more invoices. I sent a couple of the rebates to Larson's accounts and a couple to Mary's new accounts. Both would go down now. I could feel my whole persona changing. I was no longer the nice, fun-loving guy everyone knew. A darker side of me was emerging, a side I didn't even know was there, a side I didn't think I was going to like very much. Damn, I thought, their account people must be slow. What is taking them so long to discover the thefts? The trip to New York was both interesting and educational. The flight getting there was not good. I hate flying. Since 9/11, flying has become such a hassle. The added time needed to get through all the security made it a drudge. I am always exhausted when I arrive. This trip was no different. I went straight to the hotel and crashed. The next day, bright and early, I was at the branch office. I had the entire office updated by 2 p.m. the first day. I spent the rest of the day and the following day looking for things to fix. Worn cables, a couple of graphic cards, and a bad hard drive. All in all, the trip was a waste of my time. With each passing minute, my anger at the adulterous lovers grew. Tuesday night, I went to the hotel room and never left again. Except for one quick trip to the top of the Empire State Building and left for home on Friday. I came home exhausted on Friday night. I gave Mary a quick peck in the cheek and went straight to bed. I think she appreciated the fact that she didn't have to make up an excuse to turn down any of my advances for sex. One thing the New York trip did accomplish was to question my view of the final outcome of this mess. What did I want the end to look like? What about Larson's wife, Caroline? During the next couple of weeks, I did get the opportunity to log into Larson's system a couple of times. I hoped those auditors would get a clue soon. By now, we were talking about some big dollars sitting in those accounts. Then they sent me to Denver. Bob called me in and said that the New York office was very happy with my work and they wanted the same thing in Denver. I looked at Bob and he just shrugged his shoulders. He said he had no clue why I was going, and I believed him. When I got there, it was the same thing. I spent a couple of days on System Security 101 and the rest in the hotel room. Using Mary's computer, I logged into the lovers' fake bank accounts. All told, there was over $1 million in them. It was a given that Mary and I would be getting a divorce. Then I thought, is this money community property? I laughed to myself. However, over the next few days, the thoughts of the money kept returning. If I sued Larson, I would probably win a big chunk of money. Couldn't I just take this money and call it even? I fought with the implications of this. Was I trading an immoral act for an illegal act? Was I that kind of person? But they had ruined my life, gutted me and stole my manhood. Was I even thinking straight? Fuck them, let's do it. A week later, they sent me to Miami. But this time I had a plan. I wrapped up all the security upgrades by Tuesday, and on Wednesday morning I was on a quick flight to the Bahamas. It was very easy to open a bank account in Larson's name down there. I made another trip to the Grand Caymans and opened another bank account in Mary's name. I was back in Miami in time for my flight home and arrived back at OR very tired. I went straight to bed and didn't wake up until noon on Saturday. 2 weeks later, I was on a plane to Boston. The logistics were a little more challenging, but I still had time to sneak over to Zurich to open a couple of accounts there. When I got home, I began moving the money to the overseas accounts. I also moved the money from one account to another at various times. This is the way it went for the next couple of months. I was sent on a fool's errand every 3 weeks or so. Seattle, Phoenix, Atlanta, etc. The Phoenix trip afforded me the opportunity to jump to Mexico City to open an account there. This added another offshore account to flow the money through. At home, I kept logging into Larson's accounting system and altering invoices and forwarding the money to the local banks. From there, it was sent offshore. I think the planning and sneaking around was the only thing that kept me sane during this time. My life with Mary had become one of my roommates. We shared our lives when they collided, but she had her own world and she could not let me see any of it. I attempted to bring us together, but nothing worked. Whenever I attempted to get close, she began some kind of argument. Most of these arguments were over the most insufficient things, like how I put the dishes in the dishwasher, or putting my coffee cup on the counter rather than in the sink. Many times I felt that these arguments were manufactured to deny me affection. One sneaky event that I was very proud of occurred in November. I got a hold of Mary's calendar and noted a day when she and Larson were to be at lunch. I waited until their lunch date started. I got a dozen roses and went to her office. All the girls in her office just gushed over the flowers and what a great husband I was then said. Unfortunately, Mary was at a meeting. They were just leaving for lunch and I just asked if I could leave the flowers on her desk. They agreed. I moved into Mary's office and quickly shut the door. I sat at her desk and logged into her computer. From here, I fixed a couple of invoices and logged into one of the bank accounts. I knew that this would leave a trail. If those auditors ever got a clue, this would help. I then went into Larson's office and did the same. While I was on Larson's computer, I decided to look around a bit. Buried deep was a folder of pictures. I opened it up and saw various pictures of Mary in numerous sexual positions. This hurt, but not as much as at the beginning of this affair. I copied the folder to a thumb drive that I always carry. I left quietly. When I got home that night, Mary was all over me because of the roses. She said that that was so romantic. It was one of the best nights we had in a long time. But I knew that tomorrow it would be back to my wife, her lover, and me. About a month later, I informed Mary that I was going to take a French class at the local community college. The class was on Tuesday and Thursday nights. She could barely contain her glee. 2 more evenings she could spend with her lover. This was part of my new exit strategy, and any time away from Mary was less stressful. The manufactured work trips continued and didn't hinder the classes. I spoke to the instructor, he understood, and I ended up with a B in the class. The affair showed no sign of ending, and the auditors showed no sign of catching on. I wondered how these guys got to be so successful, and then I remembered Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Never mind. I knew that the whole thing was going to end soon. Mary's company had to close out their books by the end of the fiscal year. They had to catch the missing money by then, and they did. I was on another trip when Mary called me in a panic. I was sitting at the hotel pool in Los Angeles when she called. She said that some kind of audit was going on and that she was going to be late. She said don't bother trying to call her that night. I sipped my banana fuzzy umbrella drink and said, "Yes, dear, good luck." Quickly, I pulled the pin on my exit strategy. I moved the funds to the Mexico account and grabbed a plane down there. I withdrew all the money in bearer bonds and stuck them in a safe deposit box in Los Angeles. Mary called me at about noon and said that there were some problems and could I get home quickly. I said that I was not finished with the security work, but would try to get home by Thursday. I ordered another of those banana drinks and smiled to myself. Well, the shitstorm has arrived. The next morning, the internet had news accounts of the two of them being arrested. The headlines read, "Executive and Mistress in Massive Swindle." The pictures were not flattering. The article stated that funds were siphoned from various accounts for the lovers' personal use. The article continued stating that the auditors had traced some of the money to the Grand Caymans and that they would contact Cayman authorities to get access to the account. Bail was set at $1 million each. I arrived home Thursday night and was at the courthouse early Friday morning. I used the house as collateral for the bail money, and Mary was released to me by about 2 p.m. We drove home in silence while Mary cried. Once at the door, she ran up to take a shower. She said she had to get the jail smell off her. I recalled a similar run-up to the shower after last year's awards dinner. I poured myself a scotch and waited downstairs. A few minutes later, Mary came down dressed in a long bathrobe. She sat across from me and explained that she hadn't done anything wrong. She didn't take any money. She was innocent. She never said a word about the affair, neither confirming nor denying. And I never brought it up. I said it must be some kind of mix-up and that we would get an attorney and fight it. It was very frosty around the house while waiting for the trial. Mary spoke very little and said nothing about Larson. My life limped along. I went to work and came home. That's about it. Larson decided to fight the charges together with Mary, and they met occasionally with their attorney. Other than that, Mary did not leave the house. I don't know if their affair continued or not. I do know that Larson's wife, Caroline, filed for divorce. Mary was trying to be nice to me. Usually, Mary had some kind of meal prepared when I got home. Although she never spoke of Larson or the past year, I guessed she was trying to bury it and keep us together. She attempted to seduce me a couple of times, and I let her. I followed the case in the newspapers at work. The paper said that the feds tracked the money from the Caymans to Zurich and then to Mexico. They said that they lost the trail there. So far, no money had been recovered. I kind of expected the police to come to arrest me, but so far none had. As the trial neared, Mary was trying harder to please me. Unfortunately, it was too late. I met with a divorce attorney, had him draw up the papers. The trial only lasted 3 days. By this time, the press had forgotten all about the case and had moved on to other scandals. Mary and Larson sat at the defendant's table at opposite ends with the attorneys between them. I attended all 3 days. I listened as the auditors described the crime and how they tracked the money. They laid out a good case with links to Larson's and Mary's logins. The defense tried to argue that the passwords could have been hacked, but then the prosecution connected the transactions to Mary's and Larson's computers. They were both screwed. The prosecution laid out Larson's character as being controlling and manipulative, and portrayed Mary as a gullible co-conspirator. I think the jury bought it. After 3 days, the jury retired to consider the verdict. Mary and I found a small conference room and sat. I wanted to end this. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the divorce papers. I had listed irreconcilable differences as the cause. Mary took them sadly. I said, I was going to file for adultery. Mary quickly interrupted, but that was never proven. But I have pictures, I answered. That shook her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a stack of photos. I took the first of the stack and handed it to her. It showed Caroline and me at the top of the Empire State Building. Not adultery on your part, but on mine. I continued, Larson's wife Caroline came over to my office on the day of the awards dinner last year. She had a private investigator following her husband and had proof of his affairs. I say affairs because you were not his first. I was devastated and I called her a liar. I didn't believe it until the dinner. I know you went off with him sometime and I know he took your panties. The next day I sent her an email to apologize. I had tears in my eyes. When you and Larson sent me to New York, I knew what the trip was for. It was so that you and Larson could get together. I wondered what you did to get Caroline out of town, and I was surprised when she showed up at my hotel room door on that Tuesday night. I invited her in and we ordered a couple of bottles of wine from room service. We sat on opposite beds, got drunk, cried, and compared stories. She said that the private investigator recorded your phone calls when you were planning my trip. Before Larson had to think of a reason for her to leave, she volunteered to leave town to visit her mother. We spent the rest of the trip in the hotel room. The only time we went out was to visit the Empire State Building. I said that I had never been there and Caroline acted as my tour guide. You may not believe this, but Caroline and I did not touch each other the entire time. I gave her a couple more pictures. They showed Caroline and me in Denver. She showed up in Denver. She played some of the recordings of you and your lover, mostly the ones where he was convincing you to cut me off from sex. I learned then why our sex life had died. It was over a bottle of scotch that Caroline and I held each other. Caroline and I were not in love. We were just a couple of poor souls pushed together by the actions of our mates. Together we tried to heal the wounds caused by Larson and you. I laid out more pictures of Caroline and me, Seattle, Phoenix, and Boston. The pictures showed us enjoying the sights and places that Mary and I talked about. We were becoming good friends with benefits by then, I said. Then I gave her the pictures from Miami. The pictures showed Caroline in a bikini. She looked good. In addition, there was another girl in the pictures. That other girl in the pictures is a good friend of Caroline's. Remember when I told you my fantasy of having two girls at the same time? Well, let me say it was everything I thought it would be. Mary was crushed. She had tears in her eyes. I felt bad, too. If she had confessed her sins somewhere along the way, we may have been able to get past it. If she had come to me long ago and said that she wanted out of our marriage to be with Larson, I would have been hurt. But I would not have been destroyed like I was. I was sorry for the whole mess. I got up to leave and said, "Goodbye, Mary. I loved you once," and with that, I left. I was completely packed by the time the verdict came in. They were both guilty. Since none of the money was recovered, Larson was sentenced to 7 years. Mary got 3 years plus 2 years of probation. My attorney had the power to sell the house and all the remaining contents. I gave him directions to pack up all of Mary's stuff and put it in storage. All the money from the house was to be put in an escrow account for Mary along with half the savings. I was on a plane to France by midnight. I sat on my veranda looking out over the Côte d'Azur. From my deck, I could see the beach. I was a good 3 blocks from the beach and walked there most every day. As I sat and drank a good bottle of Côte du Rhône wine, I contemplated that year. I moved to the south of France and had not been back to the States in over a year since the verdict. I had not spoken to or heard from Mary. I became a lonely recluse here in my chateau. I call it that, but in reality it is nothing more than a small house. But it is mine. Caroline has visited a few times, but that relationship will go nowhere beyond. Friends with benefits. Good benefits, mind you. Her friend did come along one time, and it was just as good the second time around. Caroline did quite well in her divorce, and she will make some lucky bachelors very happy, if he can overcome her distrust issues. She knew about my scheme to pay back Larson and Mary. She felt it quite fitting for the both of them. She is happy with her life and is moving on. I, on the other hand, have issues. Although I don't have to work, my ill-gotten gains can support me. I set up a little online business. I write software for integrating systems. Same thing I was doing for Bob. I can do it all from here. I got a couple of contracts and it keeps me busy. I even got an email from Bob. He recognized my work and offered to steer a couple of clients my way. I thanked him. The ladies at the patisserie laugh at my poor French, and every day they attempt to teach me a few more words. I figure that by the time I'm 100 years old, I should have it mastered. I have recovered some from Mary's betrayal and divorce, but I am having a harder time justifying my own actions. I remember reading a case study in a college psychology class. The case described a husband that went missing and turned up again years later. The case said that this husband was just getting out of work one day and he disappeared. He lived in the San Francisco Bay Area with his wife and 2 young children. He was getting off early because the Oakland Athletics and the San Francisco Giants were playing a World Series game that day. The case study said that as he was leaving his office, the Loma Prieta earthquake struck. The man was almost killed. Bricks and large chunks of the building came down on both sides of him, narrowly missing him. At that instant, the man realized that he could have been killed. That realization served as a wake-up call. The man looked at his life and saw how unhappy he was. He saw all the things he wanted to do before he died. The man hurried home, packed, and left his wife and kids without a word. About 4 years later, the authorities found the man. He was happily married with 1 child. The police arrested him and sent him for a psychological evaluation. The psychiatrist deduced that when he was almost killed, the man reacted. His view of the world drastically changed to include the possibility of life ending at any moment, and the man acted accordingly. He ran away, leaving all responsibilities behind. But over time, the man realized, subconsciously, that he did not live in a world where death followed him around every corner, so he began to revert to the comfortable life before the earthquake. He became just what he was before, a happily married family man. Maybe that is how it is with me. When I was in love and could trust the people I loved, I was a good, honest man. I never fudged on my taxes, told lies, or seriously thought about another woman. Mary was my life and I loved her with all my being. Except for the pain of losing someone close to you, the betrayal of someone you love so intensely hurts the most. It's a pain that buries itself deep within your soul and strangles your heart. When my world changed in an instant, I became something else. I am not happy that that person resides inside me. I have some choices to make in the future. Do I stay a recluse with walls surrounding my soul that prevent that bad me from coming out? Or can I let people in, a little at a time, to reintroduce the good me to the world? I don't know where the answer to that question lies. That little blonde girl at the patisserie is cute, though. And that's the end of today's story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and drop a comment below. Your support helps the algorithm push my content further. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It really helps me keep creating more stories for you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.